I'm here, I know, I am a bit late to the content party for the new commanders, but I didn't want to rush a video without thinking through and process all the infos we have now in our hands, skill descriptions included. This is not a commander presentation video about Nevsky and Bertrand. This is my full in-depth analysis and future meta pairings predictions and probably a preview of everything we will test out when the commanders will actually be available to play in the game. Please don't be scared by the length of this video. I found so many interesting mechanics buried in the skills of the new commanders and I really wanted to tell you about them, so you are fully prepared on what to expect. But wait, there is someone here who wants to tell you something. Hey Mrs. Wick, what will we talk about in this video?
We will talk about the math and the mechanics of the skills, pairings, commander synergies, counters, and all about it. Let's start!
Thanks Mrs. Wick for the lovely presentation and welcome everyone back to the channel. It's been a crazy last few days with all the news and the content. I have already spoken about everything, and as soon as the new museum boosts will be available, I will make sure to test the commanders out. But this video is all about the new cavalry commanders, Alexander Nevsky and Bertrand du Guesclin, for friends Bert. I'm gonna call him Bert from now on. I mean, it looks like a bird to me, what do you think? Before, please consider leaving a like on the video and subscribing. This analysis took me a long time to make and it would help me out a ton with the YouTube algorithm. We'll start with Bert, shall we? He's a cavalry, conquering and defense commander, which is a unique combination of talents. The closest thing to him is probably Saladin with cavalry, conquering and support, while we could compare the combination of talents to Pakal, which is an infantry, conquering and defense commander. Surely Bertrand has some of the top picks for the talent trees, but ultimately his utility will depend mostly on the skills. Active skill Battle Hungry, classic 1000 rage requirement. For the next 3 seconds, normal attacks have a 100% chance to deal direct damage to the target, damage factor 700, and reduce their rage by 20. Of course, we will assume that being this a conquering commander, he will be maxed out, so we will not speak about how the skills evolve for the sake of being short. This is plain and simple DOT, or damage over time, which I have explained several times on the channel already and is the only type of damage that is considered additional, even if it's not worded like that, and will be consequently enhanced by the latent power talent on the skill tree. Therefore, if Bertrand were to be a secondary commander to a skill tree commander, his active damage could be enhanced by that particular talent. No additional effects, let's go on. Second skill, Seigneur Sympathy. If you were wondering, the name of this skill comes from the fact that Bert's family was part of a minor Breton nobility, the Seigneurs of Bruns. Wait, you were not wondering that? My bad. Cavalry units led by this commander gain 10% increased attack and 10% health, and also gain a further 10% march speed and 5% reduced damage from all sources if outside Alliance territory. Just to specify, you will always be outside Alliance territory unless you're actually on your territory. Yeah, elementary, my dear Wick. What I mean is that unless you are on the territory of a structure, holy site you own and similars, you will always be considered outside your territory, including maps like Ark of Osiris, Champions of Olympia and Canyon. In total, this skill will grant you 10% cav attack, 10% cav health, 10% cav march speed and 5% damage taken reduction. If you ask me, I would have preferred the stats to be stacked up on something in particular that could make this commander shine more when paired with another commander who had another stat particularly high. This is a bit of everything and I don't think it helps. The march speed, by the way, is always a nice addition, unless of course you're rolling. Third skill, Fabian Strategy. The Fabian Strategy, and I'm going to explain the name even if you did not ask about it, is a military strategy where you try to avoid the frontal battles in favor of a harassing strategy where you skirmish your enemy multiple times, disrupt the supplies and lower the overall morale to bring the opposing side down or to surrender. And our friend Bert was pretty good at it, historically. When attacking cities or strongholds, troops led by this commander deal 10% increased damage. Cavalry units led by this commander gain a 1% damage boost for 15 seconds per 10 seconds in battle. This effect can stack up to 5 times. Some people asked me to explain this particular skill. You can initially be confused by the fact that you see a 15 seconds lasting buff while you need 10 seconds to stack another layer on top of it. My theory, this is just my theory, we will see how it works in practice, is that if you discontinue your battle, you will keep having your damage boost. You just need to accumulate 10 seconds of overall battle time in a 15 seconds time frame in order to get the second stack going. This means that if you go on and off, you should still be able to get your 5% damage bonus stack if you control your march in the proper way. Overall, this skill is granting you up to 15% damage bonus, which I remember being all damage, attacks, counterattacks, and skill damage. Fourth skill, the Eagle of Brittany. Cavalry units led by this commander gain 20% increased defense. Troops led by this commander gain a 10% chance to heal, healing factor 250, for 3 seconds when attacked. This effect can trigger at most once every 5 seconds. We have a fixed bonus here being the 20% cavalry defense and a triggered effect being the healing factor. There is just a bit of math that I want to go through here, which to me seems quite important. If you have a 10% chance to activate an effect with a 5 seconds overall cooldown, like for other skills and items such as the Ring of Doom, the actual possibility for the effect to trigger is around 7%. So on average, you benefit from the healing effect for 3 turns every 13 to 15 turns. This simply means that the effect will be active in the neighborhood of 20% of the time you are battling with this commander. Each turn you will heal 250 factor. In addition to that, this commander has the defense tree at his disposal. If you take medicinal supplies on the defense tree, you will heal an additional 300 factor every time an active skill is fired. Let's say that a skill cycle will last on average 7 to 9 turns. Depending of course on the commander pairing, who and in which context you are fighting, this means that another 600 healing factor needs to be accounted for. 2 skills each cycle by the primary and secondary commanders, 300 plus 300. If we take both the middle points and consider the healing effect activating on average every 14 turns and the medicinal supplies effect, it's like healing 125 factor every single turn. Of course, the effects will take place in the corresponding turns. This is only an average estimate of the healing benefit you get in your battle. The healing part can be good or bad, depending on the situation, but we will speak about that later. Expertise skill Royal Constable, because he was the first officer of the crown. I know you didn't ask about it. Troops led by this commander take 5% reduced skill damage and deal skill damage to the attacker upon taking skill damage. Damage factor 400. This effect can trigger at most once every 5 seconds. I think the expertise is pretty self-explanatory. It will probably work better in open field where you can get swarmed and therefore there is more chance you deal the extra skill damage in a shorter amount of time compared to the situation in which Bertrand is rallying. My conclusion about this commander: I don't think he will be a meta changer. I think it's a good commander and I am curious to test him out with some older and newer cavalry commanders. In particular, 1. Bert plus Attila. I really want to see how the defense tree can benefit this combo. 2. Bert plus Saladin. 3. Bert plus Nevsky. I want to understand how the 2 new commanders work together, but I'm honestly not expecting such a great synergy. And 4. Bert plus Takeda, just for the extra healing, but I don't really think this combo will have a follow. A super hard counter to this commander will definitely be Gilgamesh. His expertise skill, Demigod, will inflict a blood-craving debuff which will deal 700 damage factor every time the target is healing. In the case of Bert, with his 4th skill and the defense tree, there is no chance he will be able to hold against Gilgamesh. I'm also a bit skeptical in using Bert as a rally commander for the reasons I've explained before. He seems like an average commander, but surely if you see him rallying, then slap him with a Gilgamesh Nebu counter rally and he will be over. And as Chizgul mentioned in his video, he will also suffer a lot from the 1 troop debuff exploit, especially if it comes from Gilgamesh. Another reason for Lilith to address this issue as soon as possible, because it's really over the top. A final note is that I like the direction of this commander. Even though he is a Mightiest Governor event commander, he's not OP, which is good. I mean, I still think Lilith should slow the hell down in releasing new commanders, but at least when I look at him, I cannot say, oh god, here we go again with a catch-up game among the whales trying to get the latest super mega powered commander in order to stay on top of the rally and garrison game. Which is not something I can say about the second Cav commander, Alexander Nevsky. Oh my god, if this commander is OP. He is so OP that he is gross. He is the Wheel of Fortune commander, cavalry, versatility and skill. Let's speak about him. First skill, Hero of Pipus. The skill takes its name from the famous Pipus battle where Nevsky defeated the Estonians and the Germans in one shot in 1242. Surely an important figure for the Russians. I'm happy they finally got their own commander. I also think they will get a civilization soon, but I have no confirmation whatsoever about this, and it's all my speculation. Deals direct damage to the target, damage factor 2300, and reduces their defense by 15% multiplied by the number of troops surrounding the target for the next 3 seconds with an upper limit of 3. Already the skill damage is huge, 2300. Then we are talking about up to 45% defense debuff if the target is being swarmed by 3 or more troops. But there is a but, and there are some important specifications to make here. Will he apply a 15% defense debuff regardless of the fact that he's the only one attacking the target or not? Because by definition, 1v1 is not a swarm. So if I have to interpret the written words here, he will not apply the 15% debuff if he is the only one attacking the target. I will not be sure anyway until I test this mechanic out, because the commander's descriptions are not famous to be extremely accurate. If my suspicion is right, he has only 2 possibilities. Apply a 30% debuff, for example in the case of a double rally or simply him and another march swarming the target, or 45% defense debuff, with 3 or more troops swarming the target, because the upper limit is 3. That's it. Luckily, this commander does not have an AoE, otherwise I'm sure it would be an even bigger mistake to release this commander, even more than it is now. Another important note on this particular debuff. I have already explained on this channel how the active skills interact with each other and also how things work between active and passive skills and items effects. In short, active skills don't stack their debuffs or buffs with other active skills, while they do with passive skills and or items. For example, Edelflet's health debuff will stack with Chandra's health debuff, which will also stack, everything will stack with the Concealed Dagger's debuff. On the other side, Zhang Yu's defense debuffs from his active skill will not stack with Nevsky's defense debuff. Then what happens? Easy. The stronger buff, or debuff in this case, will override the weaker one. So if Nevsky is secondary to Zhang Yu, when Zhang Yu fires off his active skill, there will be different possibilities according to the number of marches swarming the target. If Zhang Yu plus Nevsky march or rally is alone against another march or garrison, Zhang Yu's debuff shall prevail, and the 30% defense debuff from his active skill will activate the turn after. And also Nevsky's active skill will of course be enhanced by the fact that the enemy will be debuffed by 30% defense. If there are 3 marches swarming the target, then after Zhang Yu fires his active skill, Nevsky's debuff will prevail. I hope I explained my point in a clear and simple way. If not, please leave a comment down below and I'll try to reply to your concern. Or join our Discord, link in the description, and me or one of the players there will try to help you out. And that's it for the active skill. Second skill, Expeditionary. Cavalry units led by this commander gain 20% increased attack and 20% increased march speed. They also gain 20% increased health outside of Alliance territory. I have already explained what outside Alliance territory means earlier for Bert, so this skill is pretty straightforward. 20% attack, 20% health, and 20% march speed bonus, which is huge if you compare these to the previous commander. Third skill, Knight of Iron. When troops led by this commander consist only of cavalry, skill damage is increased by 25%. Skill damage is increased by an extra 35% for 4 seconds upon casting an active skill. This effect can trigger at most once every 5 seconds. And here you can actually see how much this commander is broken. We're talking about a 25% permanent skill damage increase and an extra 35% for a total of 60% skill damage increase when an active skill is casted. Totally busted. That is why I will suggest to have Nevsky as secondary commander, and I will explain what I mean after we finish analyzing the skills, because this point is extremely important. Fourth skill, Guard of the Republic. Cavalry units led by this commander gain 20% increased defense. Troops led by this commander deal 10% increased damage to and take 5% reduced damage from surrounded targets. Again, with the surrounded targets principle, you have an extra 20% defense bonus, which puts your total benefit to 20% attack, 20% defense, and 20% health. I don't think I have ever seen a more balanced commander than this. Plus, you deal 10% extra damage to surrounded targets and take 5% less damage from them. Huge stuff. I'm honestly speechless. Every single skill so far is busted. Expertise skill, Winter's Storm. Troops led by this commander deal 5% increased normal attack damage and gain a 10% chance to increase the health of cavalry units by 30% for 3 seconds when attacked. This effect can trigger at most once every 5 seconds. Besides the extra 5% normal attack damage, which I remember being both attacks and counterattacks, another 30% health bonus for 3 seconds with a 5 seconds cooldown is huge. The math is the same one we did before for Bert, literally because it's a 10% chance with 5 seconds cooldown, with the effect lasting for the same 3 seconds. This means that with the math at hand, the commander will benefit of an extra 30% health for about, on average, 20% of his battle time. We need to see if this effect is similar to the Scholas Lucky Coin principle, so when more targets swarm you, the 10% will apply to every single march attacking you. The wording is very similar to the coin, and if that's the case, if this commander gets swarmed a lot, you will get this bonus much more often, effectively representing a great anti-swarm boost, together with the 5% increased normal attack damage. Again, OP skill. I have now to talk about Nevsky's pairings and theoretical best positions. I think that he needs to be a secondary commander, because both the active skill and the third skill will hugely impact and benefit the damage he will deal with his super high 2300 skill damage factor. And if the target is debuffed by 45% defense, and after the primary commander casts the skill you get an additional 35% skill damage bonus for a total of 60% skill damage bonus, the final number will be something absolutely terrifying. Let's take for example Zhang Yu plus Nevsky, that for me will be the meta for pretty much everything from KVK to Osiris League. About Osiris, prepare yourself to see XY and Nevsky in every single rally, especially because you will be able to swarm every structure and therefore the buffs will always benefit you the most. I really hope Lilith does not allow us to introduce the commander inside the competition while the competition is ongoing. Otherwise, this will be the total disaster. The same disaster as it happened with Zenobia. The team with more money will win. This is not fair. So Lilith, please do not allow anybody to have this commander inside the competition when the competition is ongoing. And I'm sure most of our rally leaders will max this commander out. And I don't want us or anybody else to have an edge on any other team that cannot afford to max a commander right away. So continuing, if Nevsky is second to XY, you will get the extra skill damage granted at every skill cycle on his active skill, because on turn 1, when the cycle starts, XY will fire off his skill. This will trigger Nevsky's third skill, adding a 35% skill damage on top of what he has. On turn number 2, the buffs and the debuffs will be active. On turn 3, Nevsky will fire off his skill and deal a destructive amount of damage. On average, an XY plus Chandra rally had a skill cycle of 7 seconds, 6 in a good one. This means that the cooldown of 5 seconds will be more than enough for Nevsky's third skill to activate again when XY fires off his active skill when the new cycle begins one more time. This is busted. I don't know how many times I said that. I honestly hope Lilith will nerf this commander if he reveals to be as destructive as I think he is, and as we read on the skill descriptions. His active skill could potentially be the most destructive thing in the game, and here we go again with the whales trying to chase the meta. Yeah, this commander is great, no doubt about it, but I'm definitely not happy with how fast another broken commander will be released. At least he's a will commander and not an MGE commander, consequently more accessible to everyone. At least that. The pairings I would take in consideration for the testings are 1. Zhang Yu and Nevsky, for rallying, of course. 2. Saladin and Nevsky for open field, especially if you are already using Zhang Yu and William. I would protect both commanders in open, and honestly I would split them up. 3. Bert plus Nevsky, to see how the new commanders work together. If you have more ideas, especially for the testings, feel free to post them in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this in-depth analysis, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe and activate the bells for notifications so you don't miss out on the future testings we will conduct for these commanders. My apologies for the long video and for delaying it a little bit. I wanted to speak about everything relevant and gather all my thoughts on the topic. I will see you on the next one. Ciao!